Welcome to the podcast, The Future of Sales. In today's episodes, we have the pleasure to meet Professor Dr. Deva Rangarajan. Hello, Deva. Nice to see you.
Regis, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, which I think is a really, really cool concept and idea.
Oh, thank you very much for joining us, Deva. Deva, we have a long history, 20 years ago already, and it's been 20 years. I've looked it up. When we were young and beautiful, well, we thought we were beautiful anyway. We met at Vlerik, at the Business School of Vlerik in Ghent, where we did a lot of teaching together on sales. Since then, I noticed you left Vlerik, you went to Ball State University in the US to do research, which we'll talk about in a moment. And now, since a year, you moved back to Europe, to France, to IESEG School of Management, to do back some research in Europe. So, Deva, welcome very much. We're really, really happy to have you.
It's wonderful to be back.
Yes, and it's wonderful to see you again. So, Deva, let me start, with the first question. As you know, the format of the podcast is about the future, and we start the future by looking back. If I go back to when you left, when we went to the US pre-COVID, if you look at sales then and you look at sales today, in all of your research, tell me, what are the big things that you've noticed?
The biggest thing that I've noticed, especially, is how COVID accelerated what was already changing. What do I mean by that? I think if you really want to take a look at what happened, you need to go back to, in my opinion, the crisis of 2007-8 with the Lehman Brothers and the financial crisis that happened, where now the customer no longer just relied on the word of the salesperson to actually get what it is that they wanted. So technology came into the picture where customers today could actually go out there, look for information online, and you already saw things like the Challenger sale where serious decisions were making statements like 57% of a buying decision is made. So technology was already influencing the business case, but more so in the technologically advanced customers, right? COVID came, and suddenly even the technologically customers behind had to quickly adapt. So what this meant was sales organizations, which for the longest time could always say, well, you know what, I'm going to do this because my customer has not changed the way they work, could no longer hide behind the fact, and they had to quickly overcome their reluctance because the customer was changing, and no longer was it just the fact that my organization is asking me to do things. So for me, the COVID has acted as a catalyst in terms of how it has changed, but it has also meant that the changes required in the sales profile of the future has also dramatically changed, with more and more emphasis on a salesperson being able to use multiple channels to communicate with the clients, have more analytical skills, and more importantly, this idea of work-life balance. I'm sure most of you have heard of the Great Resignation and the Big Quit. So you have all this. So there's a lot of things that are happening simultaneously.
In a previous podcast with Carina Berger-Fjordsen, which you know as well, we talked about the great book of Neil Rackham in the 90s, which was Rethinking the Salesforce. It seems like we're back to that one. We need to rethink the Salesforce again now.
Always.
How we do things.
Absolutely, Regis. And I think for us in the academic space, when I say us, Regis, I think you mentioned Karina, are one of those weird people who have one leg in academia and one leg when we do a lot of work with corporates, is the fact that things seem to happen in circles and cycles, right? Essentially, we have that as well. So that's one of the things that we have. The only thing that's change is always going to be constant. You're always going to have people who are going to resist change. And I think that is something that we really have to rethink our sales force, rethink our sales organization all the time.
So think about rethinking the sales organization in preparation of this podcast. We had a long discussion also about the role of sales and marketing. And you were saying, I see a big shift in B2B in the importance of marketing. And so please elaborate a little bit on that, because I thought that was fascinating.
So, Regis, I'm going to specifically only talk about the role of marketing in hardcore B2B companies. What do I mean by that? In the interest of time, because I know that I can go on forever about technology companies in the B2B space where marketing always had a good role to play. But if you try and take a look at hardcore B2B companies, that is companies in the past which have mostly looked at marketing as creating brochures, websites, and marketing
Yeah.
communications, now you see that because, again, COVID has been a great leveling field, right? I mean, some of the more advanced organizations have always looked at new ways of creating leads using marketing, and that was just it. But COVID has already meant that right now, not only can marketing help you create leads, they can help you qualify leads, and in some cases, they can even point out to those customers who visited your website because the salespeople could no longer visit them, could go in, could actually see what part of the product catalog or the service catalog that the salespeople, the customers spend time on, and you can pass on this information to customers. That is something that's been very, very interesting. Now, as we discussed something when we were, you know, off the record, when we were talking things,
Yeah.
and we were talking also about things like metaverse and stuff like that coming out there. And the fact is that the sheer number of people that are going to be involved in the customer's decision making unit, that is, say, for example, in 2014, Gartner came up with a number of 5.4 that went up to 6.8, and now, according to Forrester research, it could be anywhere between 11 to 15. There's no way that a salesperson is going to be able to talk to 11 to 15 with the necessary
People.
content.
Yeah.
Persona driven marketing and sales enablement is going to become the key. And so guess who's behind most of the content? It's marketing. Now, they might have a title as sales enablement people, but it's actually marketing.
Yeah,
So
but it's marketing.
marketing is going to play a role. The level to which it is going to play a role depends upon an organization, but it's inevitable that even in organizations which never had marketing, they will see more and more marketing.
All right. So what I understood is that, and I remember 20 years ago, we had a course at Vlerik, which was B2B marketing. And I remember it was mainly complaining about nobody listens to us. We just have, you know, the ability to build a website, brochures that nobody reads. And what you're saying is that what we've seen, thanks to COVID, marketing has been, we were reliant on marketing now. Marketing has been able to step up its game and actually prove their worth to sales.
Yeah.
So no matter what we say about what's going to happen in the future, that marketing has now stepped up and in the B2B proven really their worth.
Indeed.
So I also like, you mentioned Metaverse. We talked about it earlier on as well. What are your ideas on that? Because we were talking about it. We need to teach about it. We need to say something about it.
Indeed.
What do you teach?
No. Oh, so I just teach the idea, because to be perfectly honest, like, so for example, we in academia sometimes we tend to be so focused on what we do and on trying to have rigorous research that by the time we take our head out of our rigorous research, time has moved on, technology has passed, things have gone. So the only
everybody's
thing
doing it already.
Everybody doing it, right? The fact is, so essentially, this idea of, again, COVID, the first hint as to where metaverse can play a role, and it can be metaverse or your company can have its own ecosystem that they create, whatever it is, right? Was the first time, surprisingly enough, when I started hearing that Ariana Grande, the singer, actually had a concert on the metaverse where people could meet and stuff like that, right? Right.
Yeah.
I didn't know it, but the fact is that my wife pointed it out to me. But the idea was, from there, you started thinking along the lines of, okay, metaverse, what was maybe an idea in the past, is now becoming more and more real. Now, we were already talking about virtual reality and augmented reality. So, for example, some B2B companies that I've had a chance to work with, where their customers are extremely remote, their way of sometimes selling is actually sending out an Oculus or a, like a virtual reality kind of headset. And then literally they can do it. And then you can actually take them through the whole thing about how the installation will look and everything else. Right? But the metaverse is where increasingly the events industry is extremely interested in what's going to happen, because the events industry, you know what happened with COVID, right? Essentially, you went almost from exhibitions to no exhibitions. And essentially, and then you started having these people like Ariana Grande using this, and then suddenly they started saying, wait a minute, we can actually use this, to the point where now kind of a Fortune 500 company, which is partnering with NVIDIA, apparently, which is actually involved in a lot of video gaming and stuff like that. And essentially what they can actually do in a kind of a metaverse, they can have a look and feel of a traditional production line. So this is a company operating in the manufacturing space. So essentially, you can almost literally have in a metaverse, or what I'm just going to call the metaverse. I'm going to I
Sure.
guess people are not going to see it. The metaverse, they're going to have this, and they're going to have a salesperson as an avatar in there. On the customer side, you're going to have an avatar. You could have a third-party integrator who could be integrating a solution, or in other situations could be your channel partner, or a value-added reseller. All of them, the ecosystem, all there. Now the question is, as a sales teacher, as a sales manager, as a sales leader, what does this mean about the skill set that we require from our salespeople? What does it
Yeah.
mean for us in terms of the support system needed? Is this going to be the same sales organizational structure or not? What kind of skill is needed for a salesperson to be active in metaverse and then take that off, remove that, what a virtual reality headset is, and then go have a face-to-face conversation with the other member of the decision-making unit, while at the back of the mind that is one customer, and then you could have an old school customer you have to visit next, where you have to adapt. So this idea of what this means to what we teach, what sales leaders need to plan for, all becomes very, very interesting. It also needs more research as well.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, and going back to
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
passion for marketing, marketing is going to play a role, because if I'm going to go
Yeah.
into a metaverse and I'm going to have a person with a different persona, can I find that information enough to be able to answer the questions of that person?
Yeah. Because I've been involved during COVID. I had the pleasure to do one presentation. It was not the
Yeah,
metaverse, but it was. I had an avatar. I could move around, and I could see
yeah,
my slides, and I see the other avatars, and that was a way
yeah.
for us to do a sales event. So
Yes.
I can see in the future, as what you were saying, is that
Yeah,
because we were saying sales need to be involved way more into marketing. Marketing has proven itself. Sales needs to be involved. And part of that is also, you talked about the brand of a salesperson. They need to
yeah,
brand themselves better. But it also needs to mean that we need to go into the metaverse. We need to start looking at all these different elements because they're going to become part of the sales process of the future. So I
absolutely.
thought that was fascinating. So I
Mm,
also like to go into this brand that you
yeah,
talked about when we first
absolutely.
discussed it. Elaborate a little bit on that. What do you see sales has to do there?
Indeed. So, as I was saying earlier, the whole idea of the pace of change has been rapid for customers as well as for salespeople, right? Maybe the salespeople already might have been a little bit more ready for it, mostly because of the fact that you have different customers at different pace. So
Yeah.
you would have to have been ready. I'm going to have one technologically forward company, so I have to deal with them anyway, right? Whereas customers, now, all of them had to change very fast. Now, what that meant was they went from meeting face to face, they started getting a lot of invitations for webinars, they started getting a lot of online digital brochures, and they were bombarded with information. And when that happens, and they are not experts, not all of them are experts in everything, right? So, suddenly what happens is they start panicking. They say, okay, I'm information overload, I need help. If I need help, who am I going to talk to? It's not Ghostbusters, of course, you know. No, no, it's a
Yeah.
bad joke, by the way. So, but still, if you think about this, and then they say, who am I going to call? I'm going to call the most trusted person that I know who can answer me these questions, right? Of course, and that is most likely going to be the salesperson. Now, who is the trusted advisor? It's the person who has a worth as a brand, a thought leader, or somebody that the customer can kind of can trust. And I remember, Regis, in 2015, there was a study by Forrester that said by 2020, 1 million B2B sales jobs would be made redundant in the
Become.
US
Yeah.
alone, right? And essentially, 2020 has come and passed, and now you see more number of salespeople are needed in the US alone. But the
Back.
roles that
Yeah.
they play, the
Different.
ones not you may need more salespeople, but the question is, how good are they? Are they the ones who are going to be more successful? Are the ones who are seen as a trusted advisor? And you need to build a brand, and that you should take it with the other study that was done by CSO Insights in 2019 that said only 55%, 54 or 55% of salespeople amongst the leaders surveyed were hitting their targets. And they were not hitting the problem was not that the salespeople were not trained enough. The problem was the customer was afraid to make decisions. Essentially, so if I, as a salesperson, cannot convince the customer to make that jump, leap of faith,
Yeah.
right? I cannot do it if I've not built a personal brand. And this
Brand.
number 2000 was in 2019, which means
Yeah.
you've always had to build your personal brand, now more than ever.
Yes. And now perhaps more than ever also online, because that wasn't
Indeed.
available before. Now
So,
more on
absolutely. So,
social
essentially,
media.
one of the things, indeed,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, essentially, when we talk to sales leaders, they always are skeptical, right? They say social media for B2B is not relevant. Of course, it's relevant because it's not that you're going to make the whole sale on social media, but at the end of the day, you're going to use social media, one, first of all, to target and tailor your messaging. You are going to fine tune the messaging that you want. You are going to be seen as a thought leader. You also need to understand the algorithms that go into it. So if I post something, what is the best time of the day for me to post to get maximum exposure? I should also realize that if I'm going to do this, I should just not post something, but I should also make sure that I respond to the people posting, because the more I respond, the more the algorithm will make your post appear on more number of people. So you're
Yeah.
also creating not just visibility, which is visibility for your brand, but you're also looking at potential people you might influence as well.
All right. Thank you very much for all those insights, Deva. So if I may
Yeah.
summarize just for a moment. So what you discussed, what you shared with us was that sales always had to build the brands, but they did it through networking event, they did it face to face. And now these days, we also need to do it online. There's more contacts, there's more competition for the attention of the customer. Customers have, what you say, information overload. So they're going to limit the amount of people they're going to listen to. So you better build a good brand. And that's, today you can't do it if you don't do it online. As soon
Well
as you
put,
do that,
absolutely.
you need marketing knowledge. You need knowledge, capabilities that are really essential to build those brands also online. Which is a good thing, because marketing has become way more important in a company, in a B2B company. It has proven its value. And so in the future, marketing will stay there, play a role, play a game. A role. We talked about hybrid, yes. And in a previous podcast, we didn't say it now, but we did it in the preparation. I mentioned to you that Carina spoke about, when we want to be creative, we need to spark off ideas with each other. And that's still face to face. And then you bounced onto it, and we talked about it now. Yeah, but wait a second. The metaverse might be able to be, again, a way where we do not do it face to face, but still are able to be creative and mimic the face to face meeting while interacting with each other in a different format. And I thought that was fascinating.
I think the metaverse is even more amazing because creativity, the assumption is only two parties can do it, right? Imagine that
Yeah.
through metaverse, I can involve people from different parts of the world in that conversation. I think the key is not limiting ourselves into what is possible or not. I think it should completely go on a case by case basis in terms of that. Now, just because you and I are doing the podcast does not mean that that information is not going to be created or generated or not. You could have other sources. I think
Yeah.
we should be flexible. We should be omni-channel, omniscient. That is, we should just make sure that whatever channel is the best way, we have to see how can we utilize it to the best extent possible.
Extent possible.
And that for me is what is the future. That is what it is. And keeping an open mind. Creativity also starts with keeping an open mind. So from that viewpoint, in my opinion, that's what it is. So which means for sales leaders, hire creative people.
Yeah.
Hire curious people. But of course, if they can also combine that with analytical skills, you have a unicorn. Hold on to them.
Yes. All right. Deva, thank you very much for sharing all your ideas and your thoughts and your research with us. We're very, very happy to have got you on the show. So thank you, Deva.
And thank you so much.
So this was the end of the episode. Thank you very much for listening to our episode of The Future of Sales. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hope to see you in our next episode. Deva, bye-bye.